Hateful One Eggman here with another video, and today we've got 3 different regionals we're going to go over for the OP10 meta of the English version of the One Piece card game. We had 5 different regionals around the world for this meta. We went over 2 of them already on this channel, the Perth regionals as well as the Montreal, and now we have the Song events for regionals that happened in Monterey, as well as the Sao Paulo regionals and the noHeroes Mohim regionals that happened again across the world in Germany, Latin America, and Mexico respectively. So South America and Mexico respectively. So a lot of data to go over. Generally I don't like to do like these combined ones, but with just how much data and how many deck lists I want to go over, it just kind of had to make sense for this week. It also means that I'm not going to go over as many individual deck lists for these events, so I do apologize if I don't go over your deck specifically. It's just that there's just so much data to go over. There's so many decks that are viable right now, and it's been a lot of fun to play in this meta. Look at how this meta's been doing, and I've been really looking forward to seeing how it ends up, if it's going to continue at kind of the same place at like EBO2, and because that happens in like 2 weeks from now. We only have a couple more regionals left in this meta in general. So if you guys are new to the channel though, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We make a lot of content for the One Piece card game. We also do have all the deck lists we're going to go over and many others for the OP10 meta in case you guys are interested. We also do have a deck list table going over all the deck lists we were talking about, but we also have some Japanese EBO2 deck list too, which you guys can find out. It's a different format from what we had since they didn't have the restriction list yet, but they are some good kind of clues on what the next format could look like for us as well. So again, we're just going to go over a bunch of different events and a bunch of different regionals, but we can see with these events too, it's probably easier looking at these screens, right? That Teach, Shanks are both super strong. We also have Purple Luffy pretty much topping everyone, but not at like a high number. We have Doflamingo doing very well, though it did not get a top in the Song events top 8 either. And then we just have like so many different individual leaders that are viable too, right? I think Rob Lucci's been a little bit more popular in the last couple of weeks as well. Zoro's still around. We still have some Reijus that were able to get some tops as well. Star Deck 10 Luffy, which still surprises me personally that can get some great finishes in this meta, but it can be very strong, especially it has such a good matchup against Shanks too that could help you as well. So generally speaking, there's just a lot of decks we're going to go over. We're going to have it timestamped below, and again, if you want to see any of these individually, you can find out them on the website Eggman Events here behind me. So lastly, I do want to just thank all the TOs for all their hard work for not only running these events but helping getting these deck lists too. You can find the links to their socials on the pages individually, and then also for the noHeroes, they've done a lot of work making some like deck interviews and everything. So if that does exist, I have it linked on the player name here on this page, so you can check those out too. They're probably going to know their deck a little bit better than I will as well. But finally, jumping into it, we do have Shanks. So we start off with the Song regionals winner, which is Aandroidd's version of the deck here, and we've been seeing so many different builds of Shanks, right? I think it's pretty clear that the top end is pretty rigid, right? Like the fact that it's Beckman, Silver's Rayleigh, Monkey-D. Dragon, 10-drop Shanks. Generally, these are played in most builds of Shank right now. There are also the additional, like, older version of OP10 Shanks where you see Rogers every once in a while, but there is some like difference with like usually the lower end and how you kind of get there. So here's Aandroidd's version. I also wanted to grab second place from the Sao Paulo regionals too. So this is Mauzio's version of the deck. Actually, sorry, I think this is the second place from the from the noHeroes. Sorry, this is Mauzio from the second of the noHeroes. But you'll see, like, again, like the top end is pretty much static to where we saw earlier. We do have like one additional copy of the OP6 Shanks, and it's really just like, what do you feel is the best way to get value to get to that late end pretty consistently, right? We do have like the temptation of like Uta as a searcher, or like 1-drop Nami as a searcher. Uta helps you find like a little bit of your late game later, so like your 7-drop Beckman or Curve are also your 10-drop Shanks. I also think that Lucky Roo is just like a superb card in this meta right now. It really gatekeeps some decks from existing, which I think is really strong, and it does just help you be able to play this on curve. But then also Aandroidd's versions, no searches at all, which I think is fine for this deck. We do see a bit of an atypical ad with 3 copies of Building Snake. This is on in the archetype for red-haired pirates. Not that we have a searcher for it, but giving the -3 means that we get some great opportunities to trade into some specific cards, especially since we're playing 4 copies of Marco. We can play kind of Building Snake on like 1 or 2, and then if your opponent doesn't have a way to get rid of this, like this Marco gets a lot of value on play as well. So I think Shanks is just like a great red toolbox deck, right? Again, like the late end is pretty understood on what the best plays are, but you don't get the guarantee of seeing most of them in most builds of this, and it's been really interesting to see like how many different like variations of the same cards I've been seeing as well. So not much more to say, but congratulations to Aandroidd, Mauricio, and all of our red Shanks players from this past weekend. Next up, we've got Marshall.D.Teach, and we've got the first place list from the Sao Paulo regionals, which is Tomoyoyo's version of the deck, and then we also have Erick's version of the list, which is the runner-up from the Song event regional as well. And you'll see that these lists are very similar, right? They're both the more trigger-based version of the deck, which you can identify with the I bid 500 million. This main effect doesn't get a lot of play. Sometimes it does, like if you use it in conjunction with like a Laboon or Von Augur, but generally you only care about this card for the trigger, since it does interact with 6 cost and gets around protection effects because it bounces back to hand. So it's just a weirdly strong card in a deck that just doesn't really care about like having bricks in hand, because we get so much cycle, so much usage of just discarding a card off our leader effect that we generally don't care if we draw it. It's because we can get rid of it very easily as well. So that's generally been like one of the decision points, I think, for building like this deck, and pretty much the only one, right? Do you play more of the triggers, or you just play more of like the traditional cards? I think Laboon right now is a little bit of a decision point for the deck too. I do also see the Liberation. That this is like the key card change for the build here from Tomoyoyo, but there's just the fact that you can get some removal on, like a wider removal on a board is great. It does have like a little bit of reverse synergy with 4-cost Shiryu sometimes, because you use this card to remove a card, right? And then you have one body on board. So unless your opponent puts like 3 more bodies, on the board, it's really difficult to get the Liberation effect to go off. So generally when I've seen it before, like Liberation I think is an option card. I don't think everyone runs it, but you do kind of like being able to, like, instead of playing Shiryu, you maybe do like some more setup, and then you can Liberation on 6 otherwise to get rid of the 2 bodies too. So I think that's a decision point. I've definitely seen some builds, and you'll see some builds on the website where people just aren't playing the 4-cost Shiryu, and it's interesting to see how much of a decision point that card ends up being in a lot of builds. So I don't have much more to say. I think Teach is so great. I think it's going to be still a deck to contend in the EBO2 format, and congratulations to both of our top placing, but also just all of our Teach players from this past weekend. And the next up, we've got Rob Lucci. So this is the winner from the noHeroes event. Again, this does have an interview on the noHeroes YouTube channel, so you can check that out if you guys want a little bit more of the information on how this deck works. But I'm going to wing it here. We'll see how I do. But generally speaking, I think Rob Lucci's had a mild resurgence in the second half of this OP10 meta. The fact that this was a deck that lost 2 strong cards in Ice Age and Moria just meant that a lot of people, I think, were off the deck, right? They're like, I've been playing Rob Lucci since OP07, almost a full year, and I think this is just the time to maybe try something else. But on the flip side, I think there's a lot of people who just like dug even deeper into playing Rob Lucci. They're like, you know what? I don't care that I lost my best cards. I'm still going to find a build that works. And we've been seeing a good amount of Rob Lucci in these events. So I would say, like, since this format, they average 1 top every event. Not always topping, but sometimes they get 2 in other events. But getting a win from an event this large too, I think, is a real accomplishment. So what we kind of focus on, I think, is a lot more of like our tempo removal, right? Since we still have Rebecca, it's still the best card in this deck, right? Being able to use it with Hina or Brook to get some great reduction and removal is very great. Spandine also just gets some stupid value with this card, right? The fact that for nothing on board, we can play this to play Spandine, to play Rob Lucci to get removal. It's just like a really, really great effect. So other than that, I do like the Uta and the Laboon as like additional versions of removal. We don't have Ennis Lobby for this deck since it got removed like over like 6 months ago. So having like these like Ennis Lobby like effects with Uta and Laboon does help this deck to get things in range as well. And then I do like the additional addition of like the Finger Pistol. Obviously this is a card that sees a lot of play in Teach. The fact that it's a Cypher Pull doesn't really matter because most people aren't playing 1-drop Spandom in this deck anymore, which I think is an amusing thing to see because of it used to be like a 1 or 2 of, but like the fact that we can't play it off Gecko Mori anymore to get that advantage later, I think just means that a lot of people don't really care about their early game and rather just play Moncherie to be able to get some cards recycled in the late game instead. So lastly, we do have some great removal in like Kaido, which I think most people are choosing as like the top end for this deck at like 3 to 4 copies, since it does get great removal as an activate main, so you play around Teach. And then I feel like I have to say it every time in case someone's like, why does someone play Tashigi? This leader isn't Smoker. The reason is not because of the -4, but the activate main is actually pretty great. The fact that you do get some good removal for this deck that already gets like a lot of cost reduction, and you can use it with to get rid of cards such as like Jesus Burgess or other cards that are just great in specifically like the Teach matchup that either have protection are, you can't get your on plays either. So I think 2 copies is fine for this deck, especially since it does have a 1k counter, so you're never like upset about this card being in your hand. So other than that, I think Rob Lucci's still in a really good spot in this meta, and I'm going to be surprised to see how it does in the EBO2 as well. But this is the build here from Leer. Congratulations for their first place finish. The next up, we've got a couple of X1s and kind of like in the top 4, top 8 spots. So we're going to start off with Eternal's 98's version of Monkey.D.Luffy. This deck's just never, I feel like, going to be the worst deck in any meta, right? The fact that we just have like the best consistent ramp in the game is strong. It does come at a cost that we're kind of like a 3 to 4 life leader, depending on how you think about it. But getting to the late game consistently without any like cards you need to find is just really great, especially since you do get like additional card draw because of it too. So I do see this deck doing well right now in OP11 in Japan, which is cool. It's been getting a little bit of a resurgence, right? Generally, the game plan for this deck I think is really linear right now, but I've been seeing people play different routes in the future, which is really cool to see. Luffy Taro is still like the best card for this deck if we're able to play it on curve. We just have so many good 5-drops. I've been seeing a good amount of people switch to Tony Chopper as well. So the end of your turn, you can set one of your return one of your Dawn to set this active with blocker. So the fact that it's an attacker that can turn into a blocker is great. The fact that the effect works with Eustass Captain Kid is very good, so you keep one open for a Gum Gum Giant. And just the fact that it's a bit of a chunkier blocker that's hard to remove is also just great, right? Like there's Onami, right? But if you're playing against something like the Silver's Rayleigh and like Shanks, like this card just gets removed very easily, right? The fact that this can also apply pressure the turn after it lives is very good, and I think it's a great addition for this deck in general. So I don't have much more to say. I think this deck is great. We're going to see a lot of purple variants of Luffy, I think, in the next couple weeks too, whether it's this one or the green or purple one. But yeah, the purple Straw Hat stuff is very consistent and has a lot of power right now, and I don't think that's going to change organically anytime soon. So next up, we've got another purple Straw Hat, though. Talking about it, we've got the red purple Luffy, and this is the build from Jesus from the event. I believe this is Song Events version. Yeah, the top 4 in the Song events event that happened. So generally speaking, this was one of my favorite decks in OP09. I felt like that it had some great matchups, and it still has a really good matchups into Shanks right now, which is, I think, one of the best reasons to play this deck. But at the same time, like, you don't always get the consistency. Being at a 3 life is pretty detrimental, I think, in a lot of ways, and it just means that you're sometimes inconsistent, I think, in like the mid to late game. So there are like just like a lot of tech choices that I generally don't see in builds that I want to mention real quick. I feel like we just want to focus on ramp so much. So we have 4 copies of It's to Die For, 2 copies of Lead Performer Disaster, 4 copies of Bond Clay, as well as 2 copies of Basil, and the 4 copies of Miss Double Finger, right? Sorry, we're playing 4 copies of Basil, right? So we have 12 plus 8, 12 plus 6, we have like 18 cards. Like a third of our deck is ramp cards. So I feel like this just means like we're just gonna almost always see it, right? There's also just means that like sometimes in like mid to late games we might get to 8 Dawn but have nothing to do with it because we don't have like that much variety in what we do. But that is like the maximum amount of ramp that I would expect most people to be able to play. So I think that's really interesting to see that much into this deck and see it be consistent. We also have a little bit more removal in this build than I normally see for red purple Luffy, right? Generally speaking, I think Eustass Captain Kid is a general good card for this deck. Lin as well, and then we do also have the 10 cost Shanks, both of them that exist. So 2 copies of each, 2 copies of Newgate, and then also the Silver's Rayleigh and the Edward Newgate for removal. So we just have like this weird toolbox of top end. We're not playing 9 cost Luffy, which generally I see most decks play in red purple Luffy. So to see that absent, I think is impactful. And we also do just have some tricks, right? We do also have like the slow beam sword, which just gets so much value and can, if your opponent's not expecting it, can win you the game too. So I don't know, this is an interesting build. I'm not saying like it's a bad build. I just never have seen like this combination. It's just like, most builds are like, somewhat linear. It's just like, here are all of our early game cards, here are all of our top end cards. There's nothing in the middle because it doesn't matter, and it just seemed to work out. So I think that's really interesting to see. So again, this is a build here from Jesus, and congratulations for their top 4 with the red and purple Luffy. Next up, we've got Bonney. So we've got 2 different builds. We've got Zeeta's build as well as Mole's build. It might be Mole. I'm going to say Mole for this one, but Bonney, I think like I had high expectations into this meta, and then it kind of tapered off for a lot of people, including myself, towards the end of it. But I also think that it has a chance to do very well in the EBO2 meta as well. So Bonney's just been like the generically best green leader that this game has seen since its release in OP7. It's never been the best deck in any format, but it's always been, I think, viable, at least in every time since it's been out. It's gotten a lot of tops, it's gotten a lot of wins, and just kind of a deck that stays in this meta, I feel like, right? Like the leader effect is just so generic. It's difficult for it to be like power crept out in a lot of ways. So I think there are some like decision differences between Zeeta's and Mole's build. For example, what do we do for the top end, I think, is the biggest thing for this one. I would say like the build here from Zeeta is like a little bit more standard. I would say we have like this top end, we focus a lot on like the supernovas, right? We have our 5-drops with the Cav, the Julie, Bonney, the Carrot, and the Smoker, the new addition from OP10. We have our top end with Hody Jones, 8-drop Kid, the Zoro, as well as the Shanks, which I think is very good, and just has a lot of removal. But I will say, like, it's been interesting to see the Zoro, since I think most people were off this card. There was like a thought and like at the beginning of OP9 with Ice Age being removed and Rob Lucci being less present that this card can exist on the board a lot more consistently, but it just hasn't been the case, which I think is wild. Either like if you play it, like you don't have like the defensive properties that you want. Our decks still have ways to interact or remove this that just make it difficult to actually get value from the card. So I think that's just an interesting choice. It's probably not one I would make anytime soon, but it did obviously work out very well. And then we have, I would say, the more unique build of the Bonney. So specifically saying that we don't have any 1-drop Searcher Bonney, which again I usually would say is a staple for this deck. We are running we can almost run like the Doflamingo Searcher, I think, in this deck. We're not playing the 10-drop, but we are playing like the 4-drop Rosinante. We also are playing the 3-drop. This is the blocker here from the mostly like the Odyssey package. Like I see people attack this in Lim every once in a while, but really what this says is like this is like the anti-Hody card, right? You play it out, your opponent uses the effective Hody to rest it, and then after they attack, you get to restand it, right? So if you're afraid of that card, I can see that get value. This also gets just value from being a card that you can play off Eustass Captain Kidd, so I think that is impactful. We also do have, like, again, our 5-drops. We're playing the 5-drop Carrot from OP02, so end of your turn, this is a 2k, but you can set up to one of your Dawn as active, so this is just like another way to be able to get your leader effect on curve. We're only playing one copy of the 8-drop Rosinante, but I've been seeing more and more people play 2 to 3 copies of this card. Just the protection you get to use, the fact that you get to play out 2 bodies itself, and then a 5-drop is great. And, you know, on release in OP04, this card was really middling because we just didn't have that many cards that were specifically 5-cost green cards. But now that we've gone more and more, I've been seeing this card, you know, get usage in Bonney, and I think it's a great add for the deck too. So I don't have much more to say, but congratulations to our Bonney players for their finishes there. Next up, we got Doflamingo. So this is Jpegz version of the deck, who got a top 4 finish at the noHeroes Germany event. And Doflamingo's been, I think, mildly consistent, I think, into this meta, right? It did lose Jinbei, which was definitely a hit for the deck, but a lot of people are just, you know what, this deck is still viable. We have so many good tools that we've been playing, and it's been really just good in this meta in general. It's been topping most events. It did also get a win in Montreal the same weekend as well. That list was a little bit different. They played some more of like the 1-drop Trafalgar Laws, but I have been really liking the addition of the 7-drop Dofi. I think this is a card that really helps us in one like the mirror match, because unless they have Dofi, they have to red rock this. But also just being able to get some, you know, permanent tempo on board is really great. The fact that it can bounce back a lot of unique things is really good. I've been seeing people play this in like Boa as well every once in a while, but I think that's been a really solid add. We do see like 1 copy of Kaya. It's just like an additional card to help us like be a 2k, but also draw 2 and trash 2 if we need to like reset the top of our deck if we just don't have anything good. And I think that's like a really good add for the deck in general. So other than that, I don't think there's much more unique about Dofi moving forward. I will say that from my pre-testing in EBO2, it does have a rough matchup into the green and purple Luffy. So if that deck is very viable, this deck definitely succumbs to that pressure. So we'll see if it's going to be how relevant it is in EBO2. I think it's still going to be around, but if there is going to be like a almost tier 0 deck running around, if green purple gets that status, it will be very tough for, I think, Dofi to survive an event without seeing like 2 different, you know, green purple Luffys to keep it down. So not much more to say, but congratulations to Jpegz for their finish with Dofi. The next up, you've got Reiju. So this is Skip's version of the deck here. Got a top 4 finish at the noHeroes event, and I've been seeing a good amount of people, you know, trying out Reiju again. You know, there have been like this group of people who have never left the deck, right? The leader's always been sleeved, the deck's always been sleeved, right? They've just been using some small changes here and there, and I honestly think this is probably one of the best times for Reiju to exist as a deck. I do think that it has a bad matchup into Marshall Marshall.D.Teach, which can keep it from, can deter it from being too present in this meta, but it has a lot of, great tools that exist too, right? We do have our newest card, which is the Sanji from OP10, being able to have like another searcher in a deck that's very combo based, I think is very helpful. We still are running like the Foxy Pirate build with a Porsche, Foxy, and the Tony Chopper, but also like I've been seeing builds that just really set up a lot of blockers. The co-set, just being able to just be a free blocker in most scenarios is great, and also a searchable card. That on top of like the Chopper just makes it so like your opponent has like some weird time interacting with two blockers, right? Like they can play Hody to get rid of both, but that's usually kind of expensive, and you kind of know if they can do that or not. This deck likes to generally have like a mid to high size of cards in hand just because of how much draw you get off the Reijus, and in general I think this has just been a solid deck that just can still perform in this meta despite it being like a year old at this point. So we also do get a lot of cards in OP11, like a whole new engine on the blue side from this deck, which is going to be cool to see if we get to do anything with it. I've been seeing it pop up every once in a while in Japan as well, and definitely still a deck that's worth playing, and great congratulations to Skips for their finish on their the top 4 finish with this deck as well. So there we go. All right, breaking into the kind of, I think this is like top 8 X2's top 16 spot, but we've got 2 different versions of Smoker. So we've got BloodKuma's version as well as Gamma's version of the deck here, and we do see some minor differences in the deck. I think Smoker was I had a lot more faith in the leader and the deck at the beginning of this format. Now that we've been a little bit deeper into it, I'm a little bit less optimistic about it, though when this deck goes off, it's so strong, right? Getting an additional 2 Dawn for free for most of the turns for most of the game is just such an insane effect, right? It means you can hit harder, it means that you can play more bodies out, and this deck can get a lot of advantage from it, right? So we are kind of like needed to do our best curve, right, of saying like we have to play Smoker on 5 Dawn and then Tashigi with it in most scenarios just to be able to get like the advantage later in the game. So I do think that's one of the weaknesses for this deck, is that you just kind of have to play Smoker on 5, right? And if you don't, you feel very behind curve a lot of the time, which is kind of tough. Most decks are playing like more of like the mild fortress build, I would say, or maybe I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but like we play a drop kid, right? That's the card we play in this deck a lot. We have better than average ways to defend it, just because we can play it on 8, we get 2 Dawn back, and then we can use its effect and then play out like a 2-drop Donquixote Rosinante if we're at like 9 Dawn, or if we already have 5-drop Smoker out, we'd have like 3 Dawn, so we can spend 2 to play out a Rosinante, then still spend 1 to play out like a Tashigi. Like this deck can like really protect the Eustass Captain Kid if your opponent's not expecting it. So I think that's very strong. We also have like the 10-layer Igloo, which is great, especially since it's very easy for us to keep 2 Dawn open. Mulligan is fantastic because it costs 2 in this deck, if you want to think of it that way. And then I have also been seeing Electrical Luna, which I think is going to be like a mainstay card for a lot of decks in the next couple of sets. It's just like a very good against specifically green purple Luffy, some other builds that exist, and it just makes it tough for decks to interact with as well. So I don't have much more to say. I think that like Smoker's still in a really good spot. It's cool to see it get some tops still in this meta, and we'll have to see if it's able to survive in the EBO2 meta as well. But these are the builds from BloodKuma and Gamma respectively. And then we're breaking into some bubble deck lists. So for specifically the Sao Paulo event that happened, I did get some more data than usual. So I did get all of the leaders that were X2. So these were decks that could have bubbled into a top 16 finish because they had the same like end ranking as anything else in the top 16, which is an X2 finish. So we're going to go over 4 different deck lists as well, but you guys can check out all of these as well, and they are on the site. But we're going to start off with Lim, which is a deck I've been really liking in this format right now. This deck I think has like a couple of different iterations, and for a deck that's like so specific on playing Odyssey cards, it's interesting to see how many different ways people have been building it as well. So we've been seeing like success from like the very low to the ground version of the deck. This one has a couple of high-end cards with the audio as well as the Shanks, but this just gets some really good removal as well. I'm a real big fan of Blast Breath. I think this helps you in so much of this game, especially since we ramp so much and we don't care about how much Dawn we have. Like this card is so good at just making it so we get to defend or like live when your opponent's not expecting it, and it's just great. It's just a super great card card for this deck in general. So I think it's really strong. We do have like the kind of standard package, I say, like Sabo, Doflamingo, the Edward Newgate, as well as the Enel and the Draco Mihawk. All these cards are standard, I think. Sakazuki are running 3 copies of the 6-drop, but this does get some great removal against a lot of relevant cards in this meta. We are playing 4 copies of the audio, which I think the price of this has probably gone down a little bit since the hype from the first place finish for Lim has passed. But I don't think, like, if you guys don't have this card, it's still probably best in slot for what it is, but it's not like by that much. So if you don't have 4 copies of it, play as much as you can, and then play 2 copies of like the 5-drop. And then again, like we've been seeing like different kind of little builds and engines for this deck. We are, instead of playing like the Devil Fruit, the Artificial, we're just playing Scratch Mana Poo, which is just like a good 1-drop 2K that can get some weird like interactions against like Reiju. You can rest like a Chopper, I suppose, but the fact that you get to rest a 2 cost means like you can also rest like a Marshall.D.Teach against Doflamingo, which is great. And being able to get that value, I think, is very strong, on top of just being a standard 2K. So not much more to say here, but congratulations to Ken for their finish with Lim. The next up, we've got Usopp. So this is Celo's version of the deck, and generally speaking, like, this is the build for this deck, right? Like, we've been seeing a good amount of it Usopp topping. This is the only one from these 3 events, but we did get some tops on the other side of this weekend too. And this is just generally the way you have to build this deck. It's either this version, which is I am calling the Dressrosa build. I've been seeing more people run like the Sakazuki build, which is running cards that were more reminiscent of like Sakazuki with like Houndblades and stuff. But I think this is generally the more fleshed out version of the deck too. We just get some good value off Rebecca, which is very strong. We are also running like the tech card, the one of the Gum Gum Rhino Schneider. So being able to have like a banish is great, and also just like a mini version of the King Kong gun. I really do like this card though. I think it just means that we have like so many 1-drops that generally just stay on our board for most of the game because our opponent doesn't want to give us an extra draw, that we can convert these Leos and Rebeccas into 8Ks, and they can do some real damage as well. So I think this deck is still very strong. This is the build here from Celo, and congratulations for their finish with Usopp. The next up, we've got Boa. So this is Diego's version of the deck here, and I think Boa is actually in a mildly good spot in this format. I think it's a bit tough to play, and it can be a little bit kind of sequence and brick heavy because of how you have to sequence your cards, but it's still like a great call, I think. And if it's a deck that you believe in, you can definitely play it, and I think you get some good spots for it. So this isn't the first time it's been an X2 finish for this leader in this format so far, but I do think it's just really it's still relevant, right? I think it's really strong for what it is. So you are able to take advantage of the best card, one of the best cards in Doflamingo, 4-drop loss, since we are a Warlord leader, which is really strong. We do have like a great way to put 1-drops that, I mean, like technically like this card was meant to function with Boa and Dofi, so it still works. We obviously are more like a control and like high-end deck, so we are playing 2 copies of the 6-cost Boa, which is also 7 Warlord, so it's searchable off Sengoku, the Doflamingo, the Kiros, which has been such a great add from this set for the deck, as well as the 10-cost Kaido from OP10, being able to get like a double removal. And some decks like legitimately can interact with 10-drop 12Ks. Sometimes they do because they want to get rid of the 10-drop Teach, and so this gets kind of under the crosshairs, but it's still in a really good spot. So we do have some removal events with 3000 Worlds, Raging Tiger, and Red Rock, putting for some additional ways to mess with your opponent. And it's like Boa can be really great, right? The only issue with this deck is that we have to run like 20 bricks, and the issue with that is because like we have to keep cycling through our stuff. We keep drawing, right? But if we have to use all our counter early to keep our hand size low so we can keep getting our draws, we're going to end the game with like just a lot of like Kiroses and 10-drop Kaidos in hand too. So it's definitely a balance, right? But I think this is a good balance for it, and I'm looking forward to seeing if Boa can continue to top for the rest of this event. So this is again Diego's version of the build. Congratulations for their finish. And to end it off, we do have MrYellow with their yellow Eustass that got an X2 finish. I think they got like 41st in this event. 42nd. So I think this was like the last X2, so it had the worst seeding in the event after, or worst tiebreakers rather. But this is, a new deck from OP10. It's gotten some tops in this event, in this meta in general. I think most people have been kind of off the deck in general. It's kind of has to like fill like the space that Enel kind of left. But I also will say that I think Enel is going to be really relevant in EBO2 with the new cards that it gets from that set. So Eustass Kid, I think, is probably going to see a little bit less play than what it already does. But it's a real cool deck, right? The fact that you can aggressively burn damage, but also you have these big blockers that are sometimes hard to interact with. with. The fact that you get like so much of this like trigger stuff, like it's a real good deck, I think, and I think it's a good contender for it. I know not a lot of people are on it right now, but I feel like it's a little bit undertuned or underplayed and underrepresented for what it is. So I don't really have much more to say about this deck. I think it's still very solid in this meta. We'll have to see if it still has this place in EBO2 when Enel is probably going to be running a little bit more wild in that format, but it's been really cool to see this get a top, and congratulations to MrYellow for their finish there. And that's going to be it for this one. I know it's a longer one because we had so many events that we need to go over, but if you guys want to check out any of the individual deck lists, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events, and a lot of other data, and I'm really looking forward to the end of OP10, and we are going to continue with EBO2 in the next couple weeks, and we're already starting to get data and stuff for that already. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.